lawmakers who oversaw yesterday's hearings, Congressman Devin Nunes, ranking member of the House Intelligence Committee, and Congressman Doug Collins, ranking member of the House Judiciary Committee. Good to see both of you today, gentlemen. Thank you very much for being here. Congressman Nunes, let me start with you. I want to go back and play something that you said the other night on Hannity and kind of get your thoughts about, in retrospect now, having watched this whole thing play out, if you still think this is true. Watch.
I fear what's going on right now is that Mueller's working with a lot of his staff who are back channeling to the Democrats. And so it is very possible that Mueller is going to have a few little sound bites that are going to give the Democrats exactly what they want.
You still think that might have happened?
Yeah, I do. I think they were working with the Democrats. I think when you look at Mueller's team, it was a team that we still don't know how that got put together, and that was one of the things that Mr. Mueller didn't ask about. I think what we didn't expect is that Mr. Mueller didn't seem to know a whole lot about the report. I know he had time to prepare for it. And then, you know, during our hearing, it was a little odd because they had another lawyer, Mueller's deputy, was sworn in, which is really unprecedented on our committee. Now, we said that we weren't going to ask the other lawyer any questions, and we didn't, and neither did the Democrats. But it was a little odd to see the special counsel there with a lawyer sitting next to him. So there was definitely back channeling going on, and I think, you know, the big problem was I think they probably figured that Mr. Mueller was going to talk about this Office of Legal Counsel issue that happened in Mr. Collins' committee. Yeah. And that was problematic, and then luckily, you know, somebody got to Mr. Mueller during the break and he had to come out and correct it during our committee. Yeah,
Representative Collins, you questioned him strongly as well. Were you surprised, you know, this sort of feeling that he was going to come in there and that he was going to have these sort of, you know, phrases that he was going to say that would be sort of soundbite ready and that he would rattle those off and that they would be useful? I just wonder how much Democrats actually knew about the way that Robert Mueller was going to approach this and how, you know, how this was going to go. It felt to me like they might have been quite surprised by how it actually came out, because it was not a strong performance.
No, it was not. In fact, what's really amazing to me is I think that the House on the Judiciary Committee, I think they're just so delusional about what they wanted the Mueller report to say and what it didn't say, and then they've tried to convince themselves of a new narrative since then. You know, you at the top of the show, you said Mr. Nadler's, his own words were, it's a watershed moment. Well, I'm not sure he's been to a lot of watershed moments, because yesterday was not one that you would put into that category, because Mr. Mueller was honest. In fact, here's two things that came out of it. Number one, the collusion and conspiracy. We put that to rest yesterday. Those are the one and the same, so any Democrat, such as the chairman of Intel, Mr. Schiff, who said there's collusion in plain sight, even some of my members on Judiciary, that's just a false narrative. That's a lie to the American people. Mr. Mueller put that to bed. Every time my Judiciary Committee Democrats tried to walk down obstruction, they even used little charts and put green check marks. Mr. Mueller would come and say, you know, no, I don't subscribe to your analysis. Kicked it out. So these are the kind of problems you saw yesterday. They were hoping for something they've not been able to do, and it fell flat.
Yeah, you know, Congressman Nunes, when you were talking about Fusion GPS, when you talked about some of the players involved, Glenn Simpson, and the questions that were not asked as part of this investigation in terms of the origins, it seemed like they had cherry-picked moments that they were interested in, and then even outside the timeline, you know, things that happened before and things that happened shortly after, he was not interested in, or certainly not informed about. Were you surprised that he didn't seem to know what Fusion GPS was?
Yeah, I was very surprised at that. And also, this has been the narrative for a long time about this Trump Tower meeting that lasted for a total of 20 minutes. Yeah. Even in his report, he says that. So how can you not know? If you've looked at everything to do with that Trump Tower meeting, you know that House Republicans have been talking about this for months. It was in our report that we wrote about Glenn Simpson and Fusion GPS meeting with Natalia Vesnitskaya, who was the lawyer that met with the Trump Tower at the Trump Tower meeting that supposedly had the dirt. So, you know, the fact remains that Glenn Simpson, who was working for the Democrats, working for the Clinton campaign, met with that lawyer, we think at least 3 times that we know of, right around the same time, possibly more. So how do you not put that in your report? How do you not interview Glenn Simpson? I mean, so there's so many questions that need to be answered.
Yeah, and Representative Collins, it just raised questions about, you know, if Robert Mueller wasn't that intimate with the details details of all of this and didn't know who some of these players were, you know, who was running the show here. And I wonder now if Democrats don't look at yesterday and say, you know what, we should have put the attorneys out there. We should have asked for them to come testify about their report, which for the Democrats might have been a lot more compelling.
Well, it could be, but let's also put this in very much perspective. The Democrats are trying any way they can to get somebody to tell them what they want to say. It is unprecedented to bring an investigator to a committee to explain in a prosecutorial setting what they did or didn't do. This is something that we go to the narrative that's been out there about Mr. Mueller saying we didn't exonerate the president. There's another way to put that is we didn't have enough to find him guilty. Let's be honest with our assessment and just say it was not Bob Mueller's position in place, and we rattled this off yesterday. It was the first time he's ever done it to say I didn't exonerate somebody. There's no prosecutor in this country who walks out and says I'm exonerating you. They either find guilt or they find not guilty.
Yeah.
That's all they look for.
Well, both sides seem to, you know, take away from that whole conversation what they wanted to take away, because even though, you know, it laid that out, I thought quite clearly that exoneration is not the duty of this task. It's not part of what they can determine. It's only either whether or not there's enough evidence to prosecute, and if you don't have it, then you don't have it. Then that's the end of the story. I want to get to, you know, some of what you were doing today, Congressman Collins, because you know, I think that a lot of Americans hope that now we're going to get some things done on Capitol Hill, and I think you expressed sort of a similar feeling today when you were talking about immigration at a hearing that you were at, which was, you know, about another topic. But let's watch what you said today about this and then get your reaction.
And my colleague's claim is we care. Look, I'm going to stop. I'm not going to read this. You know what is dehumanizing? Is continuing to bring the same witnesses or the same people from the same agencies to talk about this over and over and over again. What's dehumanizing is doing that and not doing anything about it. Put a bill up. I have a bill, put mine up. Make amendments to it. Do whatever you want to do. That's what Congress is supposed to do. Dehumanizing is this.
Is there any hope that the Democrats who are the majority on that committee are going to put forward a bill on immigration reform that will deal with some of the issues at the border and deal with asylum?
I don't think so, because they like it as an issue more than they like it as a solution. And I think that's what we've seen so far. We have done hearing after hearing. The chairman today actually made this comment. It was also in my remarks that people could go look at. It was that we're going to have hearings until we find a solution. That just grated on me. I cannot believe that the chairman said we're going to have hearings to have a solution. No, you have legislation to find solutions. You have hearings to learn about it. How much more do we have to learn that there's a crisis at our border? Our president's trying to do something about it, and they simply don't do anything. This is the most do-nothing House Judiciary Committee I've ever been a part of. They're so focused on trying to take down a president who is duly elected, who's doing good things, that they've just turned a malpractice area of the whole committee. That we don't take up anything anymore, and that's a problem that the American people need to look at. Well, I hope they take August and come back and say, hey, maybe we need to legislate.
All right. Well, the other thing that happened today was the agreement to put forth the spending caps for the next 2 years, and a lot of Republicans voted against it. Both of you voted in favor of it, and Chip Roy, your colleague, was not too happy about that. Let's play this.
We're not doing anything to stop and deal with the problems that we've got with cartels managing the border, and we're sitting here in a fishing expedition for emails. In what universe is this what we're supposed to be doing for the United States of America, for the people of this country who are watching their country racking up mountains of debt? America deserves the time.
Yeah. America deserves better than what I just heard from Mr. Mr. Chairman, I have a motion.
All right, so you know, he was very upset about the passing of this bill and the enormous amount. I heard him say earlier today that Ronald Reagan talked in a speech about a year that they racked up $100 million in the deficit, and now we do that on a daily basis, $100 million. Where are the people in the Republican Party who care about this?
Well, I think you see two of them standing right here. The challenge is that elections have consequences. So the president wants to rebuild the military. It's a big part of his plan. He needs 2 years to do it. If we go without a budget agreement, without an appropriations bill, the military, all of a sudden, all the progress that's been made, everything that the president is doing at the border, all of that comes to a stop. And so I agree, we have a spending problem in this country, but the Democrats control the House. So you have to reach some type of compromise. The only way we could get the money for the military and our intelligence professionals was to have the president cut a deal with the Senate and the Democrat-controlled House.
Understood,
And that's what
but
happened.
you
That's
know,
what happened
I mean,
today.
a lot of fiscal conservatives today talking about the fact, Congressman Collins, that they felt like they got nothing in this deal.
Well, that's just not true. We stood with the president on this, and the president put his weight behind it. We did talk about the military, as Devin said, but also, if you look at the spending bills the Democrats had already put forward, this actually cuts money that they actually had appropriated earlier. That means that we're saving money. We're moving in the right direction. Now, the problem is when we only focus on discretionary spending and don't deal with mandatory spending, then we're just simply, talking to each other in code, saying, here's what our problem is. We need to fix this, and I agree with it. But also, we did pro-life protections. We did things that we were kept in there that were going to be taken out. Also, they're not going to be able to restrict money being moved to work on the border wall and things like that.
Right,
So
well,
there were stuff there.
One quick question for Congressman Nunes. Reports that you've been speaking to the president at the White House or other people, staff at the White House, about replacing Dan Coats, the head of the Department of National Intelligence. Is that true?
Well, I would chalk that up in the fake news category. I am running for re-election, hope to be chairman of the House Intelligence Committee in the next Congress. But yeah, no question that I talked to the president.
Did you discuss any other
often.
candidates, potential candidates for that spot?
Well, I'm not going to get into discussions that I have with the president, but look, I'm the ranking Republican on the House Intelligence Committee, and the president's very nice to ask me questions about foreign policy and intelligence matters.
All right, Congressman, thank you very much. Congressman Devin Nunes, Congressman Doug Collins, ranking members of the two committees that were at the forefront yesterday. Gentlemen, thank you very much for being here tonight. Good to see you both.